One can say that the Baha'i community built this house of worship, but it would be equally true to say that this temple built the Baha'i community. In the early part of the 20th century, there were fewer than 1,000 Baha'is in North America. Abdul Baha, who was the son of the founder of the Baha'i faith and at the time was still a prisoner in the Middle East, he approved the project. And immediately, Baha'is were faced with the challenge, well, of how do we organize according to Baha'i principles? So for example, we had this principle of the equality of men and women. And of course, this was in the early part of the 20th century. Women didn't have the right to vote. They were largely excluded from public affairs. And from the very beginning, the Baha'i community challenged that notion. And women actually became leaders in the construction of this temple. A number of architects submitted their concepts. And it was interesting that a lot of those initial designs reflected either sort of an Eastern look and feel or more of a Western or Christian look and feel for this temple. But there was one design that was put forward by a French-Canadian architect by the name of Louis Bourgeois. He had had this vision that his mission in life would be to build a temple of unity for all of humanity. And he worked for, they say, 7 or 8 years. And he's created a new kind of language of religious architecture that reflects a concept of unity of religion. When people see a Baha'i house of worship in the middle of the North American continent here in Chicago, maybe the first assumption is that it was built by an immigrant community, that these were Iranians that came and built this temple. And that's not the case at all. The builders of this house of worship were North American Baha'is of all walks of life. The temple project took almost 50 years, from the time it was first conceived to the time it was open to public worship in 1953. And if you think about those years in history and how tumultuous they were, there were 2 world wars, there was the Great Depression, but it became a global project for the Baha'is. And I think that's why the spirit of this place is so powerful